Have you ever stopped to wonder why some women choose solitude, not as a prison, but as a declaration of freedom? Why do some women walk through life without a partner, without the label of a girlfriend or a wife, and yet carry an aura that seems far more complete than those who cling to relationships that diminish them? The truth is uncomfortable because it disrupts everything society has taught us about what a woman should be. We were raised in cultures that insist a woman's value blooms only in the reflection of another, but when she chooses to walk alone, she doesn't lose herself. She finally meets herself. Her solitude is not loneliness, it is selection. It is the sacred act of choosing peace over performance, authenticity over approval. She is not cold, as many whisper. She is simply weary of setting herself on fire to keep others warm, and nothing unsettles the world more than a woman who no longer depends on the applause of others to validate her existence. You see, society doesn't fear the lonely woman, it fears the awakened woman, because she dismantles the myth that fulfillment only comes through a man's arms. She destroys the narrative that a woman without a partner is broken or incomplete. Her very presence screams a quiet truth. Wholeness comes from within, not from the outside, and that truth shakes foundations built on control. Carl Jung once taught that what we reject in ourselves becomes our shadow. And in a way, women who embrace solitude embody the collective shadow of all those who dream of such freedom, but lack the courage to live it. They are a mirror of what many secretly crave, but fear to claim, the audacity to be enough. She does not beg for love, because love, if it must be begged for, isn't love at all. She does not chase attention, because her worth is not on display, like merchandise waiting to be purchased. Instead, she turns inward, retreats, and builds a sanctuary where her own presence is enough. In that silence, she finds strength. In that solitude, she finds sovereignty. The woman who walks alone is not wandering aimlessly. She is building her life with precision. Where most ask for permission, she chooses. Where most hunger for validation, she rests in her own clarity. That is why she often faces criticism, judgment, and attempts to label her as cold, arrogant, or unworthy. Because society has no vocabulary for a woman who refuses to be owned. And yet, behind her apparent absence lies an overwhelming presence, a force that does not shrink to fit, but expands to challenge. She does not long for the shallow kind of love that shrivels her soul. She longs for a love that amplifies her essence. Until that arrives, she will not bend, she will not shrink, she will not settle. Some will call this arrogance. Others will name it fear of intimacy. But look closer. What you see is not coldness, it is maturity. A maturity born from wounds, betrayals, and disappointments that no longer sting but teach. She knows the weight of chaos. She knows the ache of losing herself in relationships where she gave too much. She knows the bitterness of begging for crumbs from those who never intended to feed her soul. And because she has known such loss, she has earned such clarity. Maturity, however, frightens the shallow. It requires truth when most prefer illusions. It requires depth when most are content with surfaces. It requires courage when most still run from their shadows. That is why she seems unreachable to many, because she is no longer interested in promises without presence, charm without truth, or passion without respect. She does not want to be saved. She wants to be seen, and that demand for real recognition, for authenticity, terrifies a world addicted to masks. It's easier to accuse her of being distant than to face the fact that she simply refuses to be deceived again. When a woman becomes whole, the world reacts with two emotions: admiration and fear. Admiration from those who are also seeking wholeness. Fear from those who profit from women who live in halves. She does not want to complete anyone, nor does she want to be completed. She wants to overflow alongside someone who is already whole. And until that kind of presence finds her, she remains steadfast, loyal to her own soul. She is not hiding, she is protecting. She's not isolating, she is preserving. The fortress she built is not to lock the world out, but to prevent herself from disappearing within it. And that fortress, forged through fire and solitude, becomes her temple. Yet the world resists such women. In a culture where happily ever afters are still sold in pairs, her single existence is treated as rebellion. Society does not know how to honor a woman who refuses to sacrifice herself at the altar of validation. Carl Jung once said that where convention rules, authenticity dies. And this woman lives by essence, not convention. They tell her she's too picky. They tell her she should lower her standards. They tell her nobody is perfect. But she smiles. Not the smile of ignorance, but the smile of someone who has finally understood the bare minimum she deserves. What the world calls too picky is what she calls basic respect. What others call standards are simply the boundaries it took her decades to build. She is not searching for perfection. She is searching for maturity, for someone who has faced their own shadows as she has. And that is why she often walks alone, because very few are ready to stand in such truth. Her presence is discomforting, not because of what she says, but because of what she represents. She is living proof that happiness can bloom without dependence, that joy does not require an audience, that wholeness is possible without needing another to fill the gaps. And this frightens those who feed on insecurity. It unsettles women still chained to approval, but her authenticity is not confrontation, it is revelation. Her existence is a mirror, exposing those still living as fragments while she walks as a whole. She no longer rushes because she respects her pace. She no longer forces connections because she knows what forced love costs. Her no is not rejection, it is preservation. Her solitude is not absence, it is clarity. That clarity, earned through scars and silence, becomes her quiet revolution. She doesn't live to please, she lives to be. And that is what makes her dangerous. Not to herself, but to a system built on female dependency. Her greatest threat to the world is not her solitude, it is her peace. Carl Jung once said, "Those who look outward dream. Those who look inward awaken." And that is what she has done. She has awakened not in fairy tales, but in the rawness of reality. If this resonates with you, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, is solitude truly emptiness, or could it be the soil where your deepest transformation begins? And if this message stirs something within you, I invite you to comment with this phrase below: I choose peace over performance. Let it be your declaration, your silent revolution. And if you feel this message speaks your truth, don't forget to subscribe, because this space exists to remind you of your own strength. What most people fail to see is that solitude is not a void. It is a canvas, a space where a woman paints herself back into existence after being erased, diminished, or silenced for too long. In her solitude, she begins to rebuild, brick by brick, the version of herself that was lost to expectations, to compromise, to the weight of pleasing. And that reconstruction is not weakness, it is resurrection. The world often asks her, "Aren't you afraid of being alone?" But the truth is, what she once feared most, being left with nothing but her own thoughts, has become her greatest treasure. Because in that silence, she has learned to hear the voice that was drowned out by the noise of others, her own. And when a woman finally listens to herself, she becomes unstoppable. Her solitude is not a pause in her story, it is the chapter where she rises. She is not waiting for life to happen. She is writing it with her own hands. She chooses the pace, the direction, the meaning. Where others see absence, she sees alignment. Where others see lack, she sees abundance, an abundance of self-respect, of peace, of clarity. It unsettles many because they cannot imagine a life not defined by attachment. but she has tasted the difference between being chosen and being used, between being loved and being needed for convenience. And once she has known that difference, she no longer bargains with her soul. Society loves women who bend, women who soften their no until it sounds like maybe, women who silence their truth to avoid discomfort. But the woman who has embraced solitude is done bending. Her no is final. Her boundaries are sacred. And that unshakable stance terrifies those who profit from her compliance. She has walked through fire and emerged not desperate but discerning. She no longer calls chaos passion. She no longer confuses attention with love. She no longer believes that sacrifice is the price of worthiness. She knows now her value is not negotiated in the marketplace of relationships. Her value simply is. And when a woman carries that kind of self-possession, she becomes magnetic. Not because she seeks attention, but because her wholeness radiates. People are drawn to her peace, even if they do not understand it. They may envy it, resent it, or attempt to diminish it, but they cannot ignore it. The irony is this: the more she embraces her solitude, the less lonely she becomes, because she begins to attract not crowds, but kindred spirits, those who are not intimidated by her boundaries, but inspired by them, those who have also walked through their shadows and emerged with clarity. And when she meets them, it is not dependency but alignment, not filling emptiness but amplifying fullness. That is the love she is willing to receive, or none at all. A love that does not demand she shrink, but celebrates her expansion. A love that does not compete with her peace, but protects it. A love that is not afraid of her wholeness, because it comes from wholeness too. Until then, she is not waiting. She is living, fully, richly, unapologetically. Her solitude is not a countdown to someone's arrival. It is the symphony of her becoming. And yes, that frightens many, because the systems built on dependency need women to believe they are incomplete. Without that belief, entire industries collapse. Without that insecurity, entire traditions lose their grip. That is why her existence is treated as rebellion, because her independence is not just personal, it is political. Her peace threatens the foundation of a world that profits from her doubt. But she is no longer here to soothe the fears of others. She is here to honor the truth of herself. She is here to live as proof that a woman can walk alone and still walk in abundance, that she can choose solitude and still choose joy, that she can reject mediocrity and still receive love, not by chasing it but by becoming it. The awakened woman does not live to be chosen. She lives because she has already chosen herself. And so, if you feel this echo in your own soul, pause. Ask yourself, are you truly waiting for love, or are you waiting for permission? Are you delaying your life until someone arrives, or are you ready to claim your wholeness now? If these words resonate, I invite you to anchor them with this declaration. Comment below, I am whole, even when I walk alone. Let it be more than words. Let it be a reminder every time you doubt your worth. And if this message stirred something inside you, make sure to subscribe. This space is not just content, it is a mirror, a reminder that you are not broken, not incomplete, not behind. You are whole. And your solitude is not your enemy, it is your awakening.